you haven't read a little note here and you want the slides, you can just download the slides.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Kelly Johnson and I'm a volunteer with the AVCA. Just have a few housekeeping notes to go over beforehand before we get started with win more with age and skill appropriate training and strategies. So when developing future educational sessions, we do use your feedback. So please go onto our AVCA app and evaluate this session. You'll see that by clicking on this session, and then you can see a link to session survey. Let me know if you have any questions. Please remember to silence your cell phones, and remember that this session is being audio recorded and members will have access to it 3 to 4 weeks after convention. The AVCA silent auction will conclude at 7:30 tonight, so please be sure to submit your bids before then in the volleyball marketplace. Also, as a reminder, the Under Armour All-America Volleyball Match and Skills Competition is tonight, and it will be from 8 to 10 p.m. in the CenturyLink Arena. You can get your tickets at the AVCA registration desk or at the CenturyLink Arena ticket box. I now have the pleasure of introducing today's speaker, Kyle Mishima of Rotate 123. His complete bio information is found on our AVCA app. Please help me in welcoming Kyle.
Thanks, and thanks for coming. I never tell what's going to happen when we're in conflict with other things going on. I'm able to show up. So last time I was like trying to compete with people not wanting to go to their college sessions or something like that. And I was all tuned up for high school folks, and I had about 30% college people, so it was like very confusing for me. Okay, so let's take a show of hands on what levels you're coaching. So let's start at the top here at elementary. Anybody? Okay. Middle school. All right. High school. College. What's happening? So what's college people here? Say club 12s, 14. 16, 18, so we got a pretty good mix of folks. Okay, quick note about me. I've coached from middle school up to college men's. Primarily been focused in the last 10 years around JV varsity level, age groups 14 to 18. This year, I'm doing club 13, which is about as young as I've gone. Done all the seminars. Actually, my first AVCA convention was here. In 2008, so it's kind of a big cycle back. So I've done CAP 1 and 2, GMS, so forth. I think most of you have probably done all this stuff. I'm also the co-founder of Rotate 123, which sells the product Soul Stats, 123 Stats product. How many of you use that? Okay, cool. So it's a little difficult to gauge the seminar because I never know who's going to come. And so I'm going to start at the bottom and move up. But I think you'll see that the methodology will probably apply kind of across the board as a way to think about the process. So I want to give you a conceptual framework. Since I'm a stats guy, I will drive a lot of the thinking through stats, give you a process, and we'll try to stick to kind of general fundamentals as taught through the various organizations, but we'll also go kind of off-road as necessary. Okay, and the other thing is that it's really kind of impossible to go through all the skill sets in an hour. So I'm going to focus on 2, and hopefully it'll give you an idea about the way I look at the problem, and maybe that'll be helpful to you. There's 1,000 ways to do things, and this is just one, and it may be helpful. We'll see. And then I'll try to allocate enough time at the end for Q&A so that we can discuss anything on the cover. And if I don't, get to something I really want to talk about, my booth 801 is right at the entrance to the exhibit area, and I'm going to be there for the rest of the day from now until 7 p.m., and then tomorrow from like 8 to 12 or something like that. Okay. And stop me at any time, by the way, so keep this as interactive as possible. You don't have to queue all the questions to the end. Okay, so let's start with the basics. This is a hard sport. It's probably one of the hardest sports because you got a bunch of people in a confined space trying to keep a ball in here, right? If you compare our sport to soccer, when the little kids are playing at 4 years old, it's a big cluster of people moving around, but the game's always in play because the ball on the ground is live, right? Our ball on the ground is dead. Okay, so we have a really, really difficult sport to try to keep that thing juggled in the air. 6 people in cramped space, and the other 6 people are trying to prevent you from juggling. Right? So the context is really, really hard. Now, here's a couple of key things about girls volleyball that I've found over the years, right? 2 major deficits. Can't tell where the ball is going, and I have a noodle arm. Okay, guess what? They're linked together. And I'll do my science on this in a second. So, this is why boys typically do better as novices, and it's tied to the 10,000-hour rule. How many people know what the 10,000-hour rule is? Okay, so this is made famous by Malcolm Gladwell in the book Outliers. I love his book, but he's also a journalist, not a scientist, and he takes pretty big liberties, right? So the basic concept is that if you do 10,000 hours of focused practice, you will become an expert in whatever it is you're doing, okay? And he quoted a guy named Erickson. And the reality is, you read the Erickson study, it doesn't quite say that. He kind of like simplified it. And I think that the top line of it is generally true, but the reality is, when you look at the real data, it's a little bit more complicated than that, okay? Because if you think about it just in your real life, right? I don't think any of us here, no matter how much we train, are going to break 10 seconds on 100 meters. It's not going to happen, okay? So there's a bandwidth about how good you can get within your own capabilities, right? So that's kind of the general thing. Now, boys tend to do better. The game is really ugly, right? Boys tend to do better because they don't care about form. They love crashing into stuff, and they can see the ball. And why can they see the ball? The reason is they've already exceeded the 10,000-hour rule, right? And here's my gross generalization in the same way that Gladwell does. So I'm going to take journalistic freedom here. And it works something like this, right? Boys start throwing things at each other at a very early age, okay? You know, my wife tried to get my son to be more artistic, and next thing you know, the truck is flying across the room. And his friend, right? And his friend's going, ooh, like that. So that's the practice they get, right? And there's 2 objectives here, right? If it's a ball, you try to catch it, and if it's a rock, you try to dodge it. Either way, your arm gets really good, okay, and your eyesight gets really good. Right? So by the time they hit 10 years old, they're way past the 10,000-hour rule. So when they enter volleyball, and I gotta tell you, my experience was the same. I started volleyball at about 13. I had no problems getting to the ball. My form sucked, but I got to the ball. Okay? All right, so that's the part of the training thing, and it's really important relative to what you have to think about getting reps for your teams and your girls in particular. All right, so here's the thing you have to think about. Your number one opponent is always time. You and your competitors typically have about the same amount of time. Because think about it like this, right? If in your season you can get 3 times the number of hours of practice as your competition, if your teams are relatively equal, who's going to be better? Right? It's all about the reps. Quality reps, clearly. Everybody's got quality reps here, right? Because that's where we're at the convention. Okay? So there's not that many ways to get better unless you, number one, prioritize your touches, right? The touches that matter versus the touches that maybe don't matter so much. Getting good reps, and then applying systems that get you the touches, the right touches to the right people. Okay? So now, here's my other liberty here. How many people know Maslow? Oh, come on, psycho, come on. Give me 100%. This is the class you have to take just to get an A someplace in college, right? With your 500 or your closest friends. All right? So the hierarchy of needs says that at the bottom is food and shelter, and then you fully actualize when you can spike. Okay, no bias, come on guys. That's the way it works, okay? All right, so this is that chart that I think is kind of looks at the reality of how volleyball is played, right? Because you serve a lot of balls, some of the serves get to be received, and then you get a lot of random contacts before you get into control, okay? Because you're a lot out of system. Right, on average. Then you do some digs, then you do some sets, and then you might spike the ball occasionally, and you rarely block. Right? And the issue here is, how many first contacts are there versus third contacts, and where are you spending your time training? Okay? My guess is your training looks kind of like this, which is the way my training used to look. Right? Spent a lot of time here, getting a lot of sets and hits, okay? Some passes, and then kind of down from there. Right? And the problem is, the first contact here is typically the coach, not the player, because it starts like this. Right? And it goes to the center. Okay? So something to think about. If you're more evolved, maybe it looks more like this, which is kind of evenly spread across all the skills, sort of. Okay? Does this make any sense? Okay, so here's what you need to do. You need to treat time like an investment. And the investment is, I spent an hour, how many points do I win or not lose in that hour's worth of drills? And if you can't figure that out for the drill, maybe you shouldn't do that drill. Okay? Because I see a lot of drills happening in gyms, because I'm in a club and there's 22 teams, and I watch them going, why are they doing that? Because I don't recall that's going to happen in the game. Or if it does happen in the game, maybe it happens 2% of the time. Here's a drill that most of you probably never practice. Okay? The ball goes over your head, you pivot 180 degrees, and you bump the ball back like this. How many of you practice that deliberately? Great. Okay? So this is a great one, particularly at lower levels of play, where coach is yelling at the players to get that ball. They're very upset when they don't get the ball in the court. And they never practiced it. Right? Because that thing happens. Anything below about 16 and on down, this skill is happening all the time. And you know, it progressively gets less as your ball control gets better, but it's still a skill, and few people practice that skill. You know, next time kind of like check a video out and count what percentage that skill is of a total mix of things you do in the game. I will guarantee you that at a lot of levels of play, this over-the-head pass happens way more than a spike. Okay? So, be thinking about the first contacts and then the second contacts. Okay, so here's your decision process. Kind of hard to read, huh? Okay, so the left side is serve-receive quality, then the setter skill, the attack option, the attack skill, and then your offensive system, right? I think a lot of times people start with their offensive system and then try to jam people into that, right? The second half of defense is your serve quality, whether or not blocks are important at your level of play. Then your blocking skills, your digging skills, and your defensive system, okay? So kind of the progression of ways to prioritize your effort. And in context, it looks something like this. This is a rough estimate, and I put age brackets in here, you know, less than 12, 13 to 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, approximate side out, this is earned side out rate, because at 12s, you get a lot of side outs that you don't earn, right? Because the other side's missing serve after serve, and your side out rate is 75%. It's actually more like 25 earned, okay? And so, you know, heavy emphasis on serve, receive, and receive at all times, and then gradually from there, other skills and blocking is the lowest priority, right? Okay, now let's start with the most important and the hardest skill first. Here's the thing about serve, receive. Not only is it the hardest skill, if you're not decent at it, and you're not competitive relative to your competition out there, your games will be really unpredictable. Like, great win, horrible loss, great win, horrible loss. And I'll show you why in a second relative to percentages, okay? All right? The key thing you need to know is what is your individual and team level receive error rate. Not the quality of the pass, but the receive error rate. Because that determines predictability in a game. Okay, because if your receive error rate is high, that band of variability is super big. So if you're at a 30% error rate, you're going to get 6-7 point runs on a regular basis, because the other side's got their one ace server and they hit your bad rotation or your bad receiver, and you're toast. Not fun. Not fun for anybody, including your team. Okay? All right, so here we go. So here's the process. You want to establish your baseline, particularly for your passers. This is the most critical thing you can do in your gym, and one of the easiest things to do. And then you need to figure out where you stand with competition, and then prioritize the rating, right? Am I a 2.0 passing team, or am I a less than 10% error team? Because those things, although they tend to correlate, they don't actually have to correlate. You can have a person who passes at 1.1 who has a 10% error rate, because they knock every ball straight up. Okay? And you may want that person, depending on your league. So, why stat? Michael Lewis, Moneyball. How many of you have either seen a movie or read the book? That's a must reading for this convention, right? everything they tell you, for stats, this is what, and here's the key quote. Some coaches believe they could judge a player's performance simply by watching it. In this, they were deeply mistaken. And these are Major League Baseball coaches, right, making multi-million-dollar choices incorrectly. Okay, they were basing it on things like how handsome is the guy, right? How good-looking is the girlfriend? That correlates somehow to the statistics. Okay. And Billy Beane was one of those guys. Very handsome, good-looking, all skills, and terrible when it comes down to pressure. And had the record for breaking the most bats or something like that this season. Right? Anger management problems. Okay, so you cannot see a .20 change in passing, right? But that's huge. That's the difference between 180 and 2.0, right? Wouldn't you give that for all kinds of money? Okay. And the other thing is you definitely can't see a 5% change in error rates. And that's also huge. Right? So here it goes with taking the stats. Okay, one, you figure out where your team is. And the key thing is once you have a baseline, it's a gradual process and it really helps you and your team get better. And individually, players who are athletic, right, but not experienced, will see a really rapid improvement. And every week you can see that number go up. It's a great report card, and it really helps the process of encouragement, saying, hey, work on this, work on that, and they can see the numbers change. Okay? It also helps with the parents, too, by the way, because Megan sucks at passing. Look at her on the chart. She's number 12. Okay? That's why she's not starting. Right? Feedback to players, give them progress, focal point for your techniques, and then, know who to play and know who not to play in that position. All right, so you guys know the system, right? So with 0, is a service error, 4 is an ace, 3 is a perfect pass, 0 is no return, right? Now, here's some just numbers from stats I know, and these numbers will get more accurate over time because we collect all the data that comes off of SoloStats product. We have probably 50,000 plus matches in our system, and so one of these days when we can actually do some data analysis, we'll get this called out and bring it out to you guys for more accurate information here. But roughly this is correct. So I've got kind of novice, intermediate, advanced. It's just rough ranges. Something for you to think about is serve rate, right, 20 to 27 at the low rate, all the way up to 42 at the upper rate. Ball that goes over 42, if you're not jump serving, typically goes off the court. If you're not serving corner to corner, that ball at 42 plus, it's very hard to keep in the court unless you're about 6'2" and serving down. Like the Bricio style of, that kind of thing, where it's 50 miles going down. Okay? So with that, you have, pass ratings and error rates, right? And so these are brackets of numbers, and hopefully, your mileage will differ in a good way. Okay? Critical tool, the best investment you can make. Right? Now there's a pocket radar available on the floor. It's about $200. I'm kind of cheap, so I go for the cheaper version. It's bulky. You can't put this in your pocket. Pocket radar, it's in your pocket. Right? They're both great products, but anyway, get one of these things because I got to tell you, this will help you immensely both on the receive and the serve side of the house. Okay? And I'm gradually going to start using this at the older ages for even tracking the spike speeds. Right, because a couple miles an hour as you get older, huge difference in terminations, because that velocity really counts. Okay, so what is your goal, right? So for you, you got to determine what you're capable of doing. If you look at that chain of events in your system, right? If you have a bad setter, who cares about going fast? It's mostly about high passes and high outside sets, maybe. Maybe it's not even that, I don't know. But clearly not a complex system, right? So think about, what matters for you. If you don't have a middle attack or a quick system, you want to go for low error rates and not so much accuracy, okay? And the reverse counts if you're trying to run fast. However, you can't really run fast if your error rate's high. Okay, so you want to be 2.0 at probably 10% error rates or less if you want to maintain some sort of consistency, all right? And so as a goal for your players, get under 20, get under 10. Key thing is, they don't do the yours routine because that's just terrible, right? The ball should not hit the floor. At least somebody should touch it before they make an error, right? Okay, so
let's do a little bit of how stats work. If we have a 30% error rate in a set, how many points do we give up approximately? Hands? Yes?
7.
Close. Anybody else? Any guesses? That's a pretty good guess. I bet most of you don't know right off the top of your head, right? So if these stats don't link to a number in a set, then you haven't kind of gotten to the next level of understanding what the numbers mean. Okay, that's why we're kind of here, and that's why I'm going through this, right? So let's do a little bit of math. Typically, in a set, it's 20 receives. Approximately 20 receives. It's gonna, that will vary because if you get a long, set, or you're just killing the other side with your offense, then you're fine, right? So 20 passes, 30% errors is approximately 6 errors, okay, per set. Now here's the thing that's a little bit tricky. When you go from 30% errors to 15% errors, it's not a 15% change, okay? It's actually a 50% change in the error rate. So you just, got back 3 more points, all right? And so if you get down to 10% errors, only 1 in 10 serves are they going to ace you on, okay? And this means you have control of the game, because this is the hardest half of the game to play, right? So that number driving down error rates is super important. And here's a little bit of statistic. If you go to a GMS seminar, this clinic, you'll get this, right? Which is Gil Fellingham from BYU, did a study, and he found out that a 2% improvement in slide out equals a 28 improvement in wins, okay? It's a real subtle thing, and the reason it's subtle is something like this. How many of you lose by 19 to 25? Come on, everybody does, right? Like, how many games in a season do you think that is? What percentage? 10%, 20%, 30%? Right? I think my seasons are probably, 25, 30% at least. Right? That delta is way smaller than you think when you think about this 2% rule. All right? And so that's rally scoring. It looks like 6 points. It's really more like 3. And a couple of subtle things will change that to you winning 25-23. Okay? So it's super important. Now here's how it works, right? If you receive 20 passes and you have 1 additional side out, that's a 5% improvement, not a 2% improvement. Okay? And if your error rate, improves by 5%, you've gotten back a whole point, right? And now you're within that scope. So that error rate number is really tiny, but if you make that improvement, your win rate's going to go up dramatically. So if you're not tracking error rates on your passing, you really don't know how you're winning or losing the game. Right? Yes?
Do you only track in practice or you track in the game?
Both. Yeah, you do a lot of studying in practice, and then you want to correlate that to game, because what usually happens in practice is the numbers are better, because the pressure's not there, and the weirdness and everything else that's in a large tournament, whatever, noise and all that stuff, right? Parents yelling at you. Yeah. So those things get taken out, so typically the numbers get worse, but there are ways to make the numbers comparable at training time by doing a little overspeed training. Okay. So this is kind of a standard thing I do. This is a double-sided drill. I don't do this a lot with younger players because the serve side sucks. Okay. So we wait around a lot. So if you do this with younger players or inconsistent servers, every other serve needs to come from a coach, otherwise they're waiting around the left side. Okay? And so the way this works is a person serves, coach stands in the middle, and you put up your fingers, right? So it's 2 serve, which is a 2 pass, 1 serve, which is a 3 pass, right? Just put up your fingers like this. Each player then runs to the whiteboard and writes it on the wall. Now, here's the critical thing. You really want to put it on a whiteboard. Why? Yeah, when they see it, what happens? They get more important, right? And here's the place where you get buy-in. When they start arguing with you about the score. That's the place you want to be. When they're arguing with you, then they care. Okay? So if they just accept it, that's just the beginning part. When they start getting mad at you, say, "Nah, coach, that was a 3. Good. That's a good argument to have. Then you can describe to them what wasn't a 3. Okay? But it's super competitive when this starts to happen, And also be careful because you want to treat this delicately. Somebody on that board is going to be bad. Right? And hopefully it's your middle blocker. May not be. You just don't want to find that. Yes?
Score as an individual player or a score as a team, like serving team and passing team? Or individual?
I'll show you the board. Yep. Yeah, it's individual. Okay, so this is an example, and let's see if I can make this thing. Where's my cursor? You see that? Now, there's a sports attack on the other side, which this is coming off of. Okay, and our club happens to have one, so I'm going to use it. These girls are 13 developmental team. This is not a power team, right? And this is my season that hasn't started yet. So I'm kind of like cheating by getting a few extra practices before we actually start practices. Right? And so here's one thing I realized about these girls. They're already like way off the charts in one area. Nobody complained about the pain coming off of that serve. Okay, because we're using that FOBB ball, that yellow thing, pumped up. It's hard, it hurts. It hurts me. Okay, and this ball's going at about 33 miles an hour. With my 17s, I usually go to about 40, 38 to 40. Right, that ball hurts. And none of them complained. Better than that, they stuck in there. And they gradually got better just standing in there, just taking the ball. Right, which is what you want. So the beauty of the machine is a lot of reps really fast. You get about 3 times as many reps as manual serving, and you don't blow your arm out. That's the best part, I think. Okay, so the charting looks like this. So that's the actual board from this year, right? It's kind of not pretty, but the other thing I do is I make sure that people don't have any downtime, so I put the board as far away from where they are. So they got to run there and run back. Okay? And the other thing I do is anybody who's waiting sits on the wall. There's no conversations. Because when you're sitting on the wall, it's hard to have a, hey, what was that movie like last night? Right? All that stuff going on. I want them focused to be the next person on the court. Okay, we run any kind of drill in between if the line's like, got plenty of slack in it. Right? Do ladders, jump around, whatever. Okay? So don't get your conditioning in the gaps. I don't like to do separate conditioning because you only got 2 hours. Right? Okay, so they write this up, and then I have, as soon as they finish their 10th one, they start scoring themselves and adding them up, right? So this system is really easy, right? It's 10 columns, 10 scores, okay? And then you add up, wait, what happened here? There's 2 of the columns. All right, well, that's a mistake, sorry. So what you do is you add up the columns and then move the decimal place just 1 over. That way it's super simple. Because it's a weighted average score, it's hard to calculate otherwise. It's like 8. Okay? So 10 columns, when they get done, just fold it up, move it over, and then count the number of errors, and that's the error count. Okay, error percentage. That makes sense? Really easy to do. Then you take your phone and take a shot. And so, for the serve side, the max is 4, and the receive side, the max is 3, right? And so that's the way the column should look, and then you just fill it out. And I keep track of this, put it on the table, and just kind of see what's going on. What you want to do is you want to collect 5 practices worth or 50 data points. Okay, at that time, things will stabilize, because you'll have up and downs by day. And then once you get about 50 data points, it'll start to level out, and the top 3 are usually now always the top 3, kind of like that. Okay? And here's another kind of general statistics about teams and passing, right? If you get 300 passers, you're lucky. Because I guarantee you 4 and 5 will fall off the cliff. Usually the way it is, it goes like this. And this part is about error rates. Error rates go up dramatically, right? So when I see teams using 5 passers, I'm very happy. Okay, because I know who to target. It's the one that's like serving, receiving maybe every so many rotations. That's the person to go after. Okay. Oh, one other note. I use a 0.5 score for overpasses in the whiteboard routine because it's really important to know whether the error was an overpass or going off the court. Overpasses are much easier to correct, and the ball's still in play. And at lower levels of play, giving your competition the ball is a good thing. Why? What's that?
Increases the chance there.
Yeah, what do you think the other side's error rate is at like 13th? Yeah, it's about 50%. Okay? So every ball you give them has got a half of the chance of getting a point back to yourself. Okay? So they'll attack themselves into errors. right? Okay, so, passing quality, and then you can think about your offense. But until you have that number, and you've already determined your offense, I think you're kind of cart before the horse here, right? You've got to know this number before you start setting up your offense, because it'll tell you how fast you can go. And, you may have the greatest hitters in the world, but you see these tournaments where that team is bouncing the ball at warm-up, and the other side can barely get the ball over the net, and who wins? The little team across the net wins. Why? Because they can serve and they can pass, right? Because it ain't about the hitting if you can't pass, right? Think about it, I like to think about it always like this. If you can't load the gun, you can't shoot it, okay? And that's the way it is with offense, right? That ball control is critical, okay? Okay, so here's a kind of real-world example. My developmental team, which we haven't played yet, so this is just early stats, but I'm just trying to figure out the systems now. We're at about 1.5 and 28% error rates, which is way better than I thought it was going to be. The top 4 passers are at 166 and 15%. That's phenomenal, right? So I think we may have a happy season. Now the bad news is we don't have any setters, and our hitters are kind of so-so. Okay, so that's the bad news. So we're going to run an international 4-2. The setter will be in the front right. They're not going to be releasing from the rear because I'm not having a girl who can't set running from the back. Yes?
What age group?
13. And it's developmental 13. This is not a power team. Okay, so it's a regional team. They're not going to nationals. They're not trying to qualify. All right. Right side was a team that I had a couple years ago. 176 passing. We're playing a tough league, so our passing really gets. These are real stats against in matches, and a 12% error rate. We had 2 small setters, so we ran a 6-2 because we had 2 big oppos. And the oppos were very effective. We ran probably 45% to the right. Okay? And the reason that helps you because nobody practices defending on the right, not at club level. Everybody defends from the other side because that's where all the hitters are. So it gives us a huge advantage and it helps us a lot. Plus, because they're big, they're blocking in front of the primary hitter. And we love playing against teams that had 5'9" big jumpers because our 6-foot blocker would slow them down enough by the time we get to 12, they were done. Okay, because they got blocked twice, and now they're doing their 3rd shot, which they didn't have. Right, because most players have 2 shots. Okay? And at 6-2, and so occasionally we run out of rotations, substitutions. Okay, so here's another phase. You really want to isolate the person's sort of skills from their actual athletic ability. And a number of different ways to do this. You guys do this kind of straddle thing where you just bowl the ball in and they have to move their feet and let the ball bounce between the feet. Okay, that's a super great way. That's something you should do like at tryouts. Okay, because it'll separate the technique from the eyes. Right? And you'll see the ones who are athletic versus the ones who practiced a lot. So it looks like this. So those guys, bowling, just watch this side too, right? They're just getting into the place. Now the idea is to stop your feet and not do a giddy up cowboy kind of a mounting the horse routine, okay? So they should stop, and then you can start to get an idea of like how good are their eyes, right? Their ability to figure out where that ball's gonna bounce. Okay. Really, really efficient way to do that. And this is a great drill just to practice moving your feet rather than, sticking your arm out to get the ball. Right? Okay, so 2 extreme examples, right? You have great form and bad eyes. This is a person who's had a lot of training, right? So they have excellent form. You may not want them passing in a game until they get a lot of reps where their eyes are just as good as their form. The second one is the person you really like, one with great eyes and bad form. This is the person who gets to every ball. You don't know where the ball's going to go, but they get to every ball. Okay? This is easy to fix. All right? That's the person you're looking for. Okay, so a couple of things about the stats. I had one girl on the team who, when we were at tryouts, she was doing really well picking up the ball, and like great with down balls and all that kind of stuff, but her numbers were kind of all over the place, like a lot of errors. And so I finally asked her dad, has she had an eye check recently? And middle school, right, is about when your eyeballs change. I mean, my glasses happened in 6th grade. Okay, and so with your growth and everything else going on, your eyeballs get out of sync, you can't see, and particularly girls, they don't want glasses. They really don't want to put contacts in their eyes, right? So turned out she does have bad eyes, and she actually can't see the seams of the ball in the server's hand. Okay, so it doesn't really appear until it's about 10 feet from the net. All right, so that's a way, you've lost 20 feet of distance, right, before you can figure out where you're supposed to go. Okay, so check that out. The other one is a little pet peeve, okay? It's the yelling out, move your feet. I hear coaches and parents yelling this all the time at tournaments, right? It's not the feet, guys. You know, it's the eyes, right? So I have a policy that I told my parents at a parents meeting, I don't want to hear this from the sidelines. Otherwise, they're going to have a penalty, like, you know, bring goodies for everybody, okay? All right, just a little side note. Okay, so the other thing then is, how do you get extra reps? And the problem with volleyball, again, is unlike basketball, where the kids can dribble and shoot and do all those things, you know, by themselves, it's really hard to practice by yourself. So you got to get kind of creative about equipment and things. And one of the biggest problems is that, you know, your kid, you know, ends up like reducing the real estate value of your house by serving into the garage door, you know, or into stucco, right? So you got to find other ways of doing this, with, you know, without a wall. And take advantage of the fact that people love selfies, so we'll talk about that technique in a second here. Okay, so with receives, it's really hard to get extra reps because, you know, nobody's going to serve the ball over the net at home, right? But there are some kind of other ways of getting it. Like if they have, you know, if they have like a sibling, you know, they can throw with just with a tennis ball as far apart as they can possibly get, right? And just catching that. That's great because that's all about eyeball tracking, okay? Now, you know, some of the things in our training here says there's no transference, and I disagree with this particular one, because the 10,000-hour rock rule, I think, kind of shows why boys are good at this, okay? So I think that eyeball ability to focus and get depth perception is a skill, and I think you can do it with any kind of ball. And just getting a lot of reps is really, really helpful for this, right? And the other one is, you know, the dad who really wanted a boy, they can take out their major league fantasies with their daughters to play catch. Okay, it's cool. Okay, here's a really good one. This little device, you can see a lot of this. I almost like feel like I work for Amazon. But it's this Fonesco selfie stick that comes with a tripod stand and a little button that's a Bluetooth button that allows you to run the shutter at a distance. So they can set it up, put it on themselves, smile, take a shot, and then do a little bit of the practice that you're asking them to do. And they'll send it to you by text. And the text message is great because it compresses all that video to a little clip that you can go, oh, yeah, that's good. Send them back a little feedback about, you know, a little higher arm, better contact, push back to them. Homework assignments, okay? That's the way to get reps, and I'll show you an example of that. So this girl has the classic noodle arm, and watch this stationary ball. See that? Hi. Okay, so here's practice, and you can see you can practice in any form. Look at the great dress here, parochial look, right? Okay. But this is the ultra cheap $9 void tether ball from Amazon. Okay, it's waterproof. You can leave it outside like they do at schools, right? No big deal. You know? And then, you know, this isn't spectacular, but this is only with about maybe a week and a half of at home for 5 minutes a day, like, you know, only about 10 jumps a day, right? Just a tiny amount of work. And this is a girl who can't really see the ball. And so now this is an actual set. Look at that. Up here. The first time she did this, she hit the ball kind of almost at the shoulder. And she consistently hit it down here. Now she's actually got a slight extension up here. Now she needs to just see the ball. Right, because she knows that mechanically she can reach up here and swing at it. Okay, her feet are really good. She's got good form with her feet, right? But can't see the ball. So that's the combination of things we're trying to get narrowed down. But again, series of simple homework assignments, right? I send these out to the girls. We have a little private secret Facebook page, and I send out homework assignments, and the parents get them too. And then they text me little, you know, videos. Any questions? Okay, so let's go to serving. You know, we feel like there's a trade-off between, you know, tough and in the court. And Hugh McCutcheon says the U.S. sucks at serving because we don't practice it. When we go to international play, we get killed, right? Because they're at like 98% putting the ball in. Okay, so you know, we really got to not have this compromise between sort of the speed and the accuracy, right? And so, again, the radar gun comes into play and sets some targets for what you want the girls to be at. For my girls, I'd like them to be able to serve at 30 at this age range, right? When you're up at 17, 18, you ought to be easily over 35, kind of 38 plus, right? When balls start getting 38 plus to 40, they tend to cause huge out-of-system issues on the other side, and a lot of times they don't come back, okay? But that radar gun, again, is the way to dial this thing in and figure out kind of where are you at. And it's an easy thing to do. It's just take the tournament, just take some stats against the teams out there, look. Because I guarantee you at this low rate, right, a rainbow ball's going like this, and the lateral speed is really slow. Okay, it might be going fast going up, but it's not going very fast across. Right? So just some rough numbers about the speeds, and definitely should get under 10%. This is the easiest skill in volleyball, right? It's a closed skill. The ball is in your hand. You're not trying to intercept it from somebody else, right? So getting the reps in is critical. Now here's one where the tools really help. So the two problems with serving, particularly with little kids, and they take this habit to becoming older kids, and I hate it being, a 17s, 18s coach and seeing these habits I can't break anymore, right? This is one of them, right? I was little when I started. I didn't have a very good arm, so in order to make up for it, I tossed the ball higher. And when that didn't work, I tossed the ball even higher, and pretty soon I looked like Serena Williams at Wimbledon, right? And that's not volleyball serving. The tennis serve is like a volleyball spike, right? Volleyball serve should be really, really compact, and I have a simple rule. I have everybody come up to the net, hold the ball, and toss it, and watch how much above the net it goes. 7-4 is way higher than you need to toss a volleyball for girls, right? Because for me, I'm 5'7", that ball releases about here. So it's no more than about 6 feet, right? That means there's over a foot higher clearance on the net, and people are chucking that ball, probably halfway up the antenna, right? So it's an easy to correct thing with a couple of tools. You can either use the tether ball or this little elastic thing called a tandem volleyball pal that wraps around the ball. And what you do is this, you gotta use it correctly though. You stretch it out and tighten it so that at maximum height, it stops, okay? And so when they do this and they try to, it goes, right? So now they go, gentle toss, and this is what happens, gentle toss, and oh, ball's here, right? The other problem is timing. In a serve, it's not toss hit, it's toss hit, okay? So the timing is not, it's sort of arrhythmic, so it's a half a beat off, and it's very unnatural for your body to do that. So you gotta have the girls say that repeatedly, toss hit, toss hit, toss hit, toss hit, toss hit, okay? And when they toss, make sure the ball can come right back to the hand, and do that over and over and over again. And then look at the timing right to make contact. Now this thing is very unforgiving, right? When you make contact, when you know the ball will just straight to the ground, all right? And it's a great tool, because you don't damage your garage door. Because parents love this. Okay, so the other option, by the way, this is the PE coach, PE teacher saying, never use your fist for a certain ball. And I think maybe some of you do this. Guess what? It's great, because the mechanics are perfectly the same. Flat fist, right? Just like that. And this will restrict the stroke, and the ball will go at least 20% farther. That girl that's just short of the net, it will go over the net without changing form. And as soon as they get their timing right, just open your hand. Okay, that's the difference. I've done this for years, and it works. I've had girls go from 13 fists to 15 open hand, and their mechanics are beautiful because always compact, none of this big swinging stuff going on. Okay, so I like that. You can decide whether or not you want to try that. So here's a little bit of other thing about those parents waiting around not doing anything, get them involved, right? So caution tape, which is less than $4 for 300 feet, so you'll never use it up in a season. And you tie it to the end of a couple of those extendable pole things for like sweeping the pool or changing lights and stuff. Right? Tie it to the top, set it about maybe less than 7 feet, right? And have two parents hold that or stick it in something that can hold it, right? And then you practice. Okay, now this is a wall serve so that they're just checking their technique and they're getting a lot of reps in, and then we turn around the other way and we serve the other way. And while they're serving, guess what? They have now a reminder. You can say all you want, don't toss it so high, but guess what? You're not going to say that anymore because they can see where that ball is relative to where they're standing. So you don't have to do that feedback to get it themselves. Okay. And this is working pretty well. So we'll see, how consistent the girls will get this year. But we've only had about maybe 4 or 5 sessions so far, with a lot of homework sessions too, and they're getting incrementally better already. And that homework part is really helping because think about the number of extra reps you get at home, right? Versus, coach going over and talking to you amongst 12 people. It's really low feedback. Okay. Now the other couple of things, just hitting the ball into the floor and see how far it can bounce, right? That's a great, measure of ability to control that impact in a small zone and having good snapping sort of elbow technique, right? Any questions? Okay, so I've got good much time for Q&A. So again, just kind of recapping, we'll go into right. So context, understand your competition, what skills are going to matter at what level, right? Stats, particularly for receiving and serving, and then prioritizing your touches, trying to get a high ROI on your time. So basically, prioritize against the things that matter, and then make sure you get a lot out of every one of those reps. Okay, sending out some homework and getting some video feedback, and then after all of that, figuring out your systems, and then you repeat the whole cycle. Okay? So because you're doing a continuous improvement process, and what may turn out is that something you couldn't do early season because you've gotten so much better, you can try some new things later in the season and bring them in as appropriate. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's see. This is Q&A. And a bunch of references again. WinNowBB.com/AVCA is where you can download it. My contact's there. I'm also running the entry booth at 801. And Rotate123.com has a thing called the Learning Center tab, where there's a lot of information there about using stats, optimizing rotations, how to teach kids at an early age, how to teach parents to teach kids. There's a lot of material there that's just free for your use. Okay, so let's open it up to some questions. Got to be something, right? Yes.
What kind of defenses are you teaching, even though you talked about?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Here's the thing about the defenses.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. Good point. Thank you. What kind of defenses am I teaching? Right now, I haven't taught any defense because we're still doing pure skills, but I have a pretty good idea what we're going to do. I have 3 so-called tall players. They're like about 5'9", but they're also the least trained players on the team. Everybody else who's about maybe 5'6", 5'5", or shorter, pretty good ball handlers. So the way we'll play defense is we'll have one blocker. The middle will block the whole thing. Because here's the deal. Those girls that are about 5'5", they're mostly, we have a joke going on, he says, which one is it? It's the short Asian group, of which there's 7. And, because we all look alike, you can't tell. So, those girls are all going to end up being liberos in high school. I just know it, because they're not going to get any more than about 5'7", maybe. Right? And our area, the varsity leagues are very competitive. Half these girls go to private Catholic schools, which means, they got 6-footers on the outside. Right? So, because of that, I don't want to waste cycles teaching a technique that's not going to be useful. So for example, blocking, when your hands don't get over the net, is a total waste of time. What happens in it, and I've statted this, okay? When those people block, they get in the way of the diggers. They go up like this and the ball, instead of coming straight to the digger, goes off the court. Or it goes over the digger, right? So I would rather have somebody who's going to penetrate the net block rather than somebody who's never going to do that. And they're not going to do that in high school anyway, so I say, forget about it. We're not going to teach you blocking. We'll practice a little bit, but we're not going to use that in the game. I'll only have the people who can penetrate the plane of the net blocking. Everybody else is going to be back playing defense, and we use a nickel defense, right? 5 defenders back. And guess what? You pick up a lot of balls, because the other side is not hitting the ball hard, not at this level. Even at 14s at a mid-range level, very few people can hit line. So stand back in the court and covering tips and just the angle shot is sufficient. And if the girls are good, defensive players, they'll get ball.
So, question, even though this is a developmental program,
Yep.
it's not competitive,
Yep.
so that you're elite. do you put them in situations where they're competing against their peer? Well,
Yes. So the question is, it's a developmental team, but do we put them in situations where they're competing against more elite teams? The answer is yes.
kids that run multiple offenses?
Excuse me?
Kids that run multiple offenses?
Yes, we'll hit those players, because what will happen is, the team will play at least 3 non-league tournaments, of which one is the Far Westerns. It's qualified. So, we'll hit some teams. We'll probably actually go in America just for the heck of it. So that's going to be a power team. So we'll see good teams.
No, I meant in training, not in...
Oh yeah, in our club, we'll play the other power teams. There is no other 13s developmental team. So the next team we'll play is a 13 power team. And they'll be running at least a 6-2.
Do you put them against the 18s?
Against the 18s?
Yep.
No. That would be dangerous. They get
No, it
hurt.
wouldn't. Not if you limited their attack to tips.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have like a 14s team hitting at them than 18s tipping at them. I mean, the angle of play is totally different. Our 18s team is huge.
We'll talk about
Okay.
concept different.
Okay. Yes?
How do you feel about teaching fundamentals to kids, even if it's not going to be successful at their level? So for 12s, teaching them certain things if they're not blocking, or because I feel like some coaches will teach like setters not to transition to the net, and then when they get to 15, they're not going to the net all the way.
So the question is, teaching fundamentals, even if they're not going to use it. Those things are a little bit different. So when I think of fundamentals, I think more about like for setting, your hand technique, your release, having high hands and such. As far as the directional releases and things like that, that's going to be pretty much in context with the kind of offense you're playing. And, I would never run like a release from the backcourt of a team that can't pass the ball. I see teams doing that all the time. And I think that's just completely chaotic. Here's the problem, okay? If you're not keeping the ball in play, you're not winning volleyball. It's not just a matter of winning and losing. Right, so when you run systems that are way too complicated for your team, and people are spending half their time running all over the place doing chase, that's not volleyball. And it's not helping them either, because the other part of the problem is, guess what? Playing well and losing is only fun to a point. Right, I had a season where it was 2-12. It sucked. And we played a lot of good morale games. I mean, moral victory type of games, right? Forget about it. At about the 50% mark, it gets really old. You gotta win. And so you got to balance the 2 pieces off all the time, otherwise you can't keep up the motivation. So I would never run a system that the team can't handle. That's a Bill Neville quote too, by the way. So anyway, judge, kind of guide accordingly. That's why we're taking these numbers, right, to make sure you're creating a system that can actually play volleyball. Questions? Yes.
So what do you do when you're no longer in a developmental setting and you're on a team and everybody's progressing as they're supposed to, but you have that one or two girls that just don't get it? So should you just keep progressing as you're supposed to, or hold the rest of the team back at that level?
It depends on what your team objective is,
Okay.
right? If you're getting paid to qualify, you know what the answer is. Right? So, if you have people holding the team back, they got to get those extra reps in, so I would assign a ton of homework, and they better do it, because, the other part of the thing with that situation, right, is they're not going to see the light of day. They're not going to get off the bench. That's no fun. Right? So, whatever you can do to get those extra assignments in, and to get whatever skills are missing, up to speed, and doing whatever private time is necessary to get them going is going to be critical, if it's not a developmental team. Right? If this is a competitive team, I would never put them on the court if they're going to hurt the team. Because the whole deal is they got to win and they got to qualify. So, every single match is going to count. It's really tough otherwise. Unless you're in a kind of a throwaway situation. And those things happen pretty rarely. Yeah, it's tough. Yep.
Quick question. You briefly showed a video on the homework assignments, especially for developing kids at a younger age.
Yep.
And the tetherball is great, and you can move that and adjust it as the kid starts to jump and seek higher touches.
Yep.
What is some other, I'm sure people in the room are wondering, what are some other assignments, whether it's a pass or a set?
Yeah, they've gotten a full series of assignments. One of them is just simple, attack approach footwork and going really fast. So they have to do it like this. They throw a ball in the air and they transition attack with the ball hits the floor. All right, so you chuck the ball like this, and then you transition back with the correct footwork, and you come back and jump and attack before that ball hits the ground. Because the problem is, when you go slow-mo, everybody does those steps perfectly. Right? Perfectly, and then you get a ball involved, and it's like, next thing you know, they look like they're going for a layup. All of a sudden, we're doing a slide. Okay? So everything breaks down. So speed really matters, and you got to get everybody going at, a little bit over game speed, right? Over speed training. So anything that kind of gets them to the next level. The other thing that makes me crazy is my 17s, I had a couple of players. Wow. It was like, did anybody teach you how to set? 6 feet tall and setting the ball like this. Looked like a middle schooler, right? And every time they made contact with the ball during the game, it'd be like, please don't blow the whistle. Right? And it's like, what the heck happened? So my rule this year is like, everybody's going to have lovely, buttery hands. Right? And so what we're doing is we do something called a bed set. So they're lying in their bed and just doing this with nice soft touch. Okay? And just learning how to flex the wrist and shape the ball like this. Because if they don't get this part right, when game time comes to practice, they're going to start poking at the ball again. Right? Just getting this reflex done in tons of reps like this. And they send video, and then I can critique about, where's your hand, all that kind of stuff. So, and one other thing. High hands, wow. Hands are never high enough, and that feedback is totally useless. So there is a way to fix that. Wear a visor hat, like a baseball cap, right? And if your fingers disappear, your hands are high enough, right? Just think about it. Look up, right? Like this, and visualize your fingers disappearing under the visor. Okay? Now your hands are high enough. And that's an automatic feedback mechanism for the girls, so that you don't have to keep yelling at them because they don't get where their hands are. And you know what, surprisingly, I was even wrong for myself, because I looked at my own video saying high hands, and it's like, then I put the hat on, I said, whoa, you can go 2 inches more this way, right? And the difference in power is night and day. And particularly at this level where they don't have a lot of power, the ball goes probably 20% farther, just by this much difference in the location of their hands, right? It's a lot stiffer up here, and that springiness is way, way better. So, little technique, things like that. I mean, for you, experiment, read, whatever, talk to other folks, but try things and see what works. A lot of stuff won't work, but occasionally you'll find a gem, and those things are like, the whole notion of like self-feedback for the player is what I'm trying to do with these selfie things, right? So I provide them with some info, then they can correct a lot of stuff before they send me the next video, by watching themselves, right? And you know what, players, right, who self-coach get better faster. So this is the kind of tools you're providing them. This is the fish versus fishing kind of exercise here, right? Other question? Anybody? Are we done? So there's some cards up here for some of the training things that you can join up. And then I'm also going to be speaking tomorrow at the Exhibitors Showcase at 12:45. That information is on the cards, and like I said, I'm in the booth right to the right of the entrance at the exhibit hall. All right. Thanks for coming.
Is it the same presentation?
No. Yeah, this is for the education, and tomorrow is marketing.
Which salt?
We can go down there and give Sorry. Yeah. Are you going to?
Oh, right here. Well, it's like your hands get like a lot stiffer here. Just that little bit. It's amazing. It's almost like from here. You got a nice release. But watch the power. Right? Go up here. And in fact, when you get high hands like this, John Dunning's hand calls it the third story set.
Yeah.
So 4 stories are complete.
All right, how you
So
doing?
the third story is here. And that is tremendous. And you know what they're telling now is like, now that it's been volatile, it's literally like that. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Where are you working to? Yeah, because the developmental groups are double entries. So line 13 is going to be okay, sure. Not that big. Yeah, that's a problem. That ball is like, yeah, no, you know, the bottom line ball has no system. The passing is right. It's a pretty gross conservative pass. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention also. One of the offensive systems I run is double volleyball. So I call them pops. And it's literally, forget about passing up to the net. And we do what's called D2 sets, which is we hit from the 15-foot line back, set two balls. Right, because that's where a lot of the action is going to be. Like backcourt plays, what's going to happen? Right? Yeah, so basically just a jump down ball and just you. So the ball comes in, I just hand it to you, you put it straight up, and I hit it from here. Because that's where 60% of the ball's going to be played behind the 10 at that level of play. It's not one. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then you get a lot of offense. Right, so not this big, force set to the outside. You can just cut it close. Bang, yeah. Every ball, offense. None of this offense. Yeah. You can do it. Okay, great. Thanks. 7 o'clock today.
I think we were just gonna ask some assignments for passing of the ones that you wrote, right? And you're teaching 13, so we do want to incorporate parents because we know they're always, they're chauffeurs,
Yeah.
they're just clinging by the neck. But
Yeah.
we can include them at home in these assignments.
Absolutely.
What are some good things? Because they say not to use the wall, for passing.
But if they're okay with like damaging the wall, okay?
Right. So do you have any others?
Yeah. So for example, the parents can just throw a ball at them, right? Because here's the thing. You don't want the ball going back to the server. Okay. So tilt right is always like this, right? So face the ball, tilt to the target, right? So the parent throws from here, and then they pass the ball into the garage door. To a target on
Or
the garage
into
door.
a wall. That's
Yeah,
the
or some point that where the setter should be, right? And that is those reps.
Maybe like mark a high.
Yeah, mark a spot where they're supposed to put the ball, and just
So
the
they're
reps.
just working on the different angles, but the ball's coming from the parent,
Yeah,
and the
and
wall
it's
is
a triangle. It's a triangle.
right, and the wall is the target.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That rep, if you get those reps and parents doing that, I guarantee you, because they're gonna get 1,000 reps and not get it.
Yeah.
Well, and we tell them, like, you are only gonna get better when we're not always there. I mean, you can get
Yeah,
better
yeah.
and develop. You're trying to teach them, it's not just when we're there and we're kind
And that's the one where if they do the selfie, right, and they show you
That's
some of those,
exactly
right,
what we're
then they're not gonna go off track, right? They send it to you as soon as they do it, right? You get the feedback saying, look, hey, your right foot should be in front of your left. Your feet aren't far enough apart, right? All that feedback, get it back to them so they can make those adjustments.
No, kids are so into their phones already.
Yeah,
so
exactly. It's
just
easy.
do something with it productive, not. Okay, great. Thanks so much. That's the best part. We've learned the whole.
I have a question. So I've got push my number now, so I have a 13. So 13. I know. Yeah, and this is a great info. I don't know if you found that too. So can you go to kids?
Yeah.
So 13 as well. But what is, let's say you're playing a washer, let's say you're doing, besides how you get 5 for this gets 5,
Yeah.
whatever. What what's a consequence for losing? Like, what's something good where you're not?
Yeah, it's tough, you know,
Yeah.
because the ideal thing would be not a consequence for losing, but a reward for winning, right? And I've never been able to figure that out. Never been able to figure that
I
out.
don't do any consequences like
So how do you? So if there's no consequence and I lose, who cares?
some kids are not getting better. The whole point is I want my girls to get better. So I don't have consequences. Too long. And I see half hours of practice with some and stuff or whatever else.
It's a tough one because, you know, I've gotten enough of the feedback around, you know, consequences are not good, right? But the problem is there's like this immediacy of what's going on resulting in something else. And I haven't found a good alternative to it. I'm not a crazy guy relative to that, but it's tough.
Well, and it's trying to make it a game-like scenario in the sense that,
Yeah.
you know, getting better, and like, to your point, like, if you get better in a game, that's fine, but if you lost, like, what is the carrot, but the carrot's gotta be bigger.
Actually, I was wondering if I could steal your 2 triangle pyramids, like the first. You had the first.
You can download the whole thing.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, it's on
On your website?
It's widnowvb.com /ABC.
Okay.
So you get that card.
Yeah, I just grabbed
the
it.
first part of the URL is there, just put
Okay.
/ABC.
Is there? All right, so.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, then mine's just like, hey, you get the first 5, you guys already know your team and everything like that. So what I do, if it's gonna be something like a team, they have 5 balls to get to something and then the team can do something. I don't score them because they already competing for some ice and everything else. I mean, 16, 17s, yeah, they keep them engaged. 2013s, I love them, they have a great season, they have great parents. It's my 4th year at 13.
You know, yeah, it's almost in dynamics, right? And so if you can match it that way to make it go, it's great. For me, a lot of it's just like attention span issues. You're trying to make sure that you understand, hey, you can do that, right? And so let's make sure we do this right. But again, I'm not crazy about the notion of punishment. I'd really rather have a reward. But the problem is, the reward being starting is so far out there, you know, that it's like there's no immediacy of the situation right to the next time. So.
Can I ask a question, gentlemen? Are you coaching girls?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing you need to understand, this is from my perspective, my understanding is that girls' minds don't work the same way men's minds.
Oh, no, yeah, that's 100%.
Winning isn't as important as being proficient, like learning how to be proficient what they do and looking good around everything. So if you're giving them penalties for something they failed at, it's almost counterproductive because they don't understand what they failed. They want to know what they failed.
Yeah, that's
You
my struggle.
need to know what they failed. And so you know how to correct it. So if you're looking at what they did with the ball, chances are pretty good that, especially if you're teaching skills, the problem wasn't with your skills, it was something that happened before. They applied your skills.
Well, there's two things there, right? There's a developmental issue of what are you training for?
Spiritual mind,
right? And
emotional
there's a
mind,
PDC issue.
intellectual mind,
Yeah, I understand. So the question
and
is,
four bodies.
is
It's
the
the
delta
same
between
thing.
that and
Right,
what
so
it
you have
means
to
play
identify
today?
where did that error occur? Did it occur
So that's the trick. You got to decide. Those are you're trading off
occur at the
winning
emotional
goals,
level, worrying about what's going on?
and so that's
Fear?
your coach,
Did it occur at the
decision.
intellectual
You
level,
have
did
to
you
decide.
understand, or did it occur at the physical level because the physicality didn't allow it? So once you identify that, you can change your
Yeah, sure. There's another part of that whole thing too.
objectives
Is,
and drills and what you're looking at. Don't expect perfect ball play or
and you know, teaching
something else that you
girls to get parts is a big deal.
Makes sense?
From 16 to 17, if that velocity doesn't go up, you don't turn the ball.
Exactly, and that's our goal, is to get them to swing hard, and we call it using our players to simulate coach base reps, so our players are attacking the ball at such velocity, it's like coach. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether you agree, disagree, I don't know.
It's not that we disagree, it's mostly what are your objectives?
To learn
And it's not to win in the young age.
So if your objective is to develop better players for the long haul, it's fine, that's a goal, right? What I don't like is people who are not, who are goal free. They're just doing stuff, right, because the other guys did it, right? That's not okay, that's like, why are you doing it? Oh, wow. Right, you have a clear rationale for it. As long as everybody understands that from the parents all the way through the players,
They
the
don't
club,
think
that's
about
great.
it.
And I have a 12 team, and now I've actually
Hey,
split
that's the point, all right.
reps, because we practice 5 days a week at the underage. That's what we say, 5 days a week, yeah. And now we don't require our practice to get burned out, we only go 2-3 times sometimes. I've actually split time now into the type of teaching that you're talking about, so
This
it's
first
heavy
time I
emphasis on
heard
service
something.
and techniques.
But I know
Found maybe they're not developing either as quickly as if we just focused on one or the other, but I feel like.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong, okay, it's not like,
ball contact, ball
No, I know.
but it's just when we hit, we don't hit,
and they don't know.
we spend over half the time hitting, more than half the time hitting.
And they're just starting to get, you know, I
Because that's what we hit. And you can use just the technique from
see
there.
that. And,
And sometimes it's better because they're not trying
so that's my understanding is
Yeah, they're just not here, right?
the spirit
It's, yeah, it's awesome, but